please welcome Rachael Cardiello!
I'm told to get really close to the mic, which is great because I just put on so much lipstick. Performing does not make me nervous because it's been around for so long in my life. But surprisingly, this whole storytelling thing is terrifying. I know someone has already said that tonight, but this is much scarier than playing music. So good luck, whoever else decides to do this. Just before I turned 20, I became convinced that I had a brain tumor. I was in Victoria at the time studying music, and though I'd always been a good student, I was finding it impossible to retain information. I'd be in Spanish class taking a test and not recognize a single vocabulary word that was coming up on the test. I was playing the same Beethoven sonata over and over and over, and completely unable to make any changes. I kept just seeing it cycle through. I felt off balance and clumsy. I kept losing things. And I was thinking, this isn't me, this isn't my brain. Like, I know my brain. I love school, I love learning. And nothing was sticking. As things escalated, it started affecting the really sacred parts of my life. I'd be performing music and come away from a show feeling absolutely nothing. And I'd just rush home and sit in my room in the dark and not know what to do with myself. And I met up with my family at a tulip festival, and I have an extremely close family. We'd spend like 2 hours having dinner every night, sitting around drinking tea afterwards and talking. And any chance I get to be with my brothers or my mom or dad, it was a huge moment. And on this particular meeting at this tulip festival, I felt nothing. Like, I saw them and my heart couldn't tell, and that was the scariest point of this feeling. I just felt like I couldn't access joy, and that was super scary. I told my counselor that I was maybe depressed. She thought I was just grieving. My dad had died less than a year ago, and I think that's a fair assumption that I was just feeling strange, but I knew this was different. I'd been grieving all year, and this felt like a chemical difference, like my brain had been taken away from me, and I actually signed up for an MRI because I was so determined that it was for sure a brain tumor. When it reached the point that I could barely crawl out of bed to get a handful of chocolate chips, which was the only food I had left in the house, I panicked in an exam and handed in half the questions unanswered. I finally saw a psychiatrist. The next summer saw me ping-ponging between a different antidepressant every couple of months, or every couple of weeks, which was really vicious, just the pain of withdrawal from different medications, and it was physical and it was emotional, and I felt like I was just in almost like I was in a washing machine just getting tumbled about with these medications. But at some point, kind of in the late summer, things started to turn around. The fog started to lift, and I finally got to the point where I could go for a run. I could go to shows, I could feel things, I could laugh, I could connect with people. I went on a trip with my family and swam in the ocean. I kissed a stranger. I ate cannolis. Cannoli. I'm Italian, I know. As fall came about, things continued to brighten. My brain felt razor sharp and quick. In 1 week, I started 3 bands. I felt like I could win any argument, and it was so incredibly easy to connect. I felt so magnetic. And I could see it affecting the people around me, that confidence. I remember being at a party, and someone had like a screen printing station set up, and I started painting my clothes, like trees up my skirt and weird symbols on my sleeves, and everyone around me started painting their outfits as well. And it was this kind of awesome, strange thing that ruined all of our outfits, but it was fun. Or another time we were all biking to the beach at 2 a.m., and I was on a tandem bike, and I figured out that I could stand on the back seat and do like arabesques, ballet moves off the back seat. And I was like, I felt unstoppable. I felt like I was just like, had this energy coursing through me. For the first time in my life, I felt super sexy. I could kind of look around the room. I had this power. I felt like I could make eye contact and know I would sleep with that person by the end of the night, which was definitely not my usual. I was still failing Spanish class, but this time it was on purpose. I took my teacher aside and I said, listen, like, I really respect you. I think you're an amazing teacher, but I'm not doing any of the homework and I'm not going to come for the test because I just went through this life-altering experience and it's really not high on my priority list. That was what I told anyone who grew concerned. The teacher said if she didn't know me, she'd think I was on speed. My roommate told me that she didn't recognize me. I told them all I just lived through a near-death experience and it had changed me. At some point, I met Leo and felt massively in love, mostly because he talked about how he made homemade pasta with his grandma. Plus, he knew how to garden. In the midst of the brand new romance, I disappeared. I'd taken a ferry to Vancouver. I'd been going to school in Victoria at UVic, studying music. And I stayed at this kind of Tim Burton art house with a bunch of very strange Emily Carr students. Every single inch of the walls was covered in weird, dusty art. And there was an organ that had different pipes and horns coming out of. Every pipe had a different weird jangly thing. So when you pressed a button, a key, it would jangle the jangly thing. No one ever seemed to sleep. The artist welcomed and encouraged all my inspired, unhinged recklessness. At what point I had a whole circle of these weirdos standing around me as I sat with a newspaper and a permanent marker circling words and finding stories within the story and underlining things and capitalizing things, and I felt like I was drawing out a whole extra layer of metaphor from the written story. I felt like a witch, like I'd tapped into another level of consciousness. My plan was to busk to make money for the ferry to get back to Victoria, but it was Vancouver, so obviously it was raining. I went into all the restaurants and hipster stores on Main Street and demanded that they let me play music there. When they'd refuse, I'd say, well, I bet you would if I was Neil Young. An argument that really did not work. By the time a friend bought me a ticket back to Victoria, I was desperate to see Leo and tell him all my revelations. My roommates tried to slow me down. They insisted I take a bath. They demanded I call my mom. No one knew where I'd gone for a whole week. They were super worried, really scared. But true love cannot slow down, so I took off running for Leo's house at full tilt in the dark. When I got there, I immediately crawled into his bed, only to hear my roommates outside calling for me. He said, "This has gone too far," and pushed me to go. And he said he'd call me in the morning. When I got back to my roommates, we started walking home, and they immediately veered left into the parking lot of the mental hospital and the emergency room. I insisted that I leave my viola, which I'd taken for the run for some reason, and I insisted I'd leave it in the parking lot as collateral and proof that I was not going to stay in the hospital. When the staff told me I needed to stay, I started stripping as a form of ineffective protest. In some ways, I knew exactly what was going on and refused to admit it. My dad had been bipolar. There were times where he'd be so depressed that he couldn't get off the couch to join us 10 feet away for family dinner. That was strange and sad as a kid because those were such an essential part of our family. But what really broke our hearts was his mania. He'd flip from ecstatic energy, insisting that we all go figure skating in the dark on the lake with lanterns, to a really scary fury. And being a early high schooler and learning how to flip between those emotions was taxing. It felt like he had become someone else entirely. It's something I really never wanted to see in myself. So at some point, they got me into a dressing room with a pile of pajamas to put on. I thought it was a test. I laid the blue pants on the floor to represent the ocean. I balled up the yellow undershirt to be the sun and shaped the blue overshirt into a boat. Obviously, I was showing them that I'd learned the lesson about trust and that I'd learned to trust by crossing the water on the boat. They told me again to put on my pajamas. I spent the next 5 weeks in the mental hospital, 2 of those weeks in the lockdown unit, where you are only let out of your small room if a nurse unlocks the door. Even in the main area, the nurses are separated by glass. Eventually, I moved to the more general unit. We had certain visiting hours, and one time I invited over 30 people to come visit so I could give a concert, much to the nurses' dismay. I'm still proud of that. I met a colorful assortment of characters there and had a fun time trying to escape. Coincidentally, the hospital was directly across the street from Leo's house, though he only came to visit me once. Bastard. It still seems surreal and strange to have experienced these extremes of myself, but it gave me a chance to understand something I'd only seen from the outside. Because as much as I told myself my dad had been sick and used that to justify how he'd hurt us, it didn't really make sense until I felt it myself. Thank you. All right, I'm trying this brand new song. And I'm hoping you will join me in this strange sing-along. I meant to get poster board to write out the words, but I had to teach, so I hope you guys figure it out on your own time. Will, do you think I should turn up or turn down? I think. Let's hear it for Will, the sound man. When I think about the weeks leading up to the hospital, how I stole your roommate's rings, left you waiting on the island, and all those cryptic notes I wrote on your Facebook wall, I feel sick. Boy, did they write the book on me. Thoughts of grandiosity, talking fast, moving quick. Honestly, I was so relieved just to be happy. Chemicals can take the blame, still I can't help but feel the shame, wondering what could have been if it had been normal, if I hadn't gone crazy. But on your part, to be fair, I was right across the street, and you only came to see me once in 5 weeks. But on your part, to be fair, I know it caught you unaware. How are you supposed to know how to help me? Thing about the hospital was that I was hoping I wouldn't need it. The thing about the hospital was that I was hoping I'd be fine. I've always been a little bit wild. I've always been a little bit sad. The thing about the hospital was it ate up all my precious time. What a shock to find my brain back in the fog this summer. All consuming, suffocating, same old story. And I could feel you pulling back, shutting down. Who can blame you? So close to it, black hole spinning, a sinking ship. And I know you'll stick it out, you're here for good. You're not bailing, but I'm not blind. I can see how it scares. So on my part, now I swear I will do everything I can not to ever get that low again, 'cause I hate it. So on my part, now I swear I will do everything I can not to ever go that high again, 'cause it broke me. See me now, I'm being so careful. See me now, I'm being so good. Still I've got my reservations, just like any sane person would. And here's the sing-along. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I wouldn't need it. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I'd be fine. I'd always been a little bit wild. I've always been a little bit sad, yeah. The thing about the lithium is I guess I'll miss my edges a tad. And just for reference, before we all sing along to that, lithium is a drug that just pulls in your highs and your lows. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I wouldn't need it. The thing about the lithium is I was hoping I'd be fine. Wild, always been a little bit wild. Sad, I've always been a little bit sad, yeah. The thing about the lithium is I guess I'll miss my edges again. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I wouldn't need it. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I'd be fine. I've always been a little bit wild. I've always been a little bit sad, yeah. The thing about the lithium is I guess I'll miss my edges a tad. One more time. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I wouldn't need it. The thing about the lithium is that I was hoping I'd be fine. I've always been a little bit wild. I've always been a little bit sad, yeah. The thing about the lithium is I guess I'll miss my edges a